inaugural dinner of the NESG Rising Together initiative. We are greatly honored to have everyone here, and you're giving us your precious Sunday evening. Yes, there will be French interpretation, which will come in a few minutes, but just to say a few words, this is an initiative of the NESG for the 30th anniversary of the Nigeria Economic Summit. Now, we all know that the theme of the summit this year is collaborative action for growth, competitiveness, and stability. And one of the important ways of achieving the growth and the competitiveness and the stability is actually just looking next door or further down the street. Everybody next door and further down the street, whether we look up, to the left, to the right, or slightly down, they're all francophones. And so it is critically important that as we talk about growth, as we talk about development and development that's going to be sustainable, we really have to do it together. And this is the launch of, I would say, the realization and being very purposeful about working together with our neighbors. And that's what we're going to be discussing today. This is not going to be a one-shot. Neither is it going to be 100 kilometers dash. This is a marathon. It's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take looking at it from different perspectives. But are we going to do it? Yes. Are we going to do it well? Yes. And are we going to succeed? Absolutely yes. And the fact that you're in the room, I must say, is confirmation that we are going to succeed. I'll let my Nigerian francophone brother interpret.
Merci beaucoup. Elle a déjà parlé beaucoup de choses en anglais et je crois que beaucoup de monde, la plupart de nous ont déjà compris tout ce qu'elle a déjà dit, n'est-ce pas? D'accord. Mais je dois expliquer ça aussi en français. Bonsoir, mesdames et messieurs distingués invités. Bienvenue au dîner inaugural de la 30e édition du Sommet économique nigérien sous le thème Action collaborative, sous le thème Action collaborative pour la croissance, la compétitivité et la stabilité. Moi, je m'appelle Monsieur Adedeji Odulesi, je suis nigérien. Elle a dit que je suis francophone. Non, non, non. Nous sommes ensemble. Je suis nigérien. Mais nous allons travailler pour 3 jours, c'est-à-dire lundi, mardi et mercredi, n'est-ce pas? Oui. C'est le commencement maintenant. Il n'y a pas de problème. Nous sommes ensemble. Il faut amusez-vous bien, il n'y a pas de problème ici. Bienvenue au Nigeria et bienvenue à Abuja. Nous sommes ensemble. Merci beaucoup et que Dieu vous bénisse. Et c'est à elle maintenant pour faire la recognition.
To help with setting the protocol, we'd like to recognize certain people that are in our midst today. Everybody is precious and important, but we would like to recognize the ambassador, His Excellency, the ambassador for Côte d'Ivoire to Nigeria, His Excellency, Ambassador Kalilu Traore, who has made time to be with us. His embassy and has just been working hard on economic collaboration with Nigeria and with Nigerian businesses. And that commitment is the reason why he's here today. We also have in our midst the chairperson of the board of NESG, Mr. Olani Yusuf. We have the Vice President for the African Development Bank, the Vice President responsible for private sector and industrialization. I know I've left one out, Mr. Solomon Queno. Oh my goodness, I can't believe I did that. We need to be connected. So he's Vice President for private sector, infrastructure, critically important for the conversations we're going to be having today, and industrialization. So thank you, VP Queno, for making the time today. We also have in our midst my former boss, Mr. Doctor, oh my goodness, did I do that? Dr. Adeshegu Akiolugbade. And just in line with our conversation today, he's wearing a new hat. He is the chairperson of NSIA Insurance. NSIA Insurance is, NSIA Insurance Nigeria is the affiliate of the NSIA Financial Services Group, which is a group coming out of Côte d'Ivoire, investing in Nigeria. And they are a Pan-African group, and they started as an insurance company, and they have expanded their financial services into banking. And they are in multiple African countries with their banking affiliates. And then Mr. Akinolugbade was Executive Director and General Counsel, the founding Executive Director and General Counsel of Africa Finance Corporation. So if Africa Finance Corporation is succeeding, somebody prepared the right legal documentation for them to build upon. And he was also former General Counsel of the African Development Bank, where he was my boss. And I did learn a lot from him. So anything good that I did, anything not good that I did, it's because I did not listen. We also have in our midst one of the busiest, absolutely busiest persons in Nigeria today, and he's Mr. Taiwo Oyedele, and he chairs the Presidential Committee on Fiscal Reforms, also on tax, fiscal and tax reforms, and again, I left out a third leg, but please forgive me. But Mr. Taiwo Oyedele, before this strong, hard hat that he was given by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, he was also partner at PwC. But thank you very much for being with us. And we have with us also Mr. Maître Brizois. Maître Brizois is a partner in a law firm that he founded with his partner in Côte d'Ivoire. And Maître Brizois has actually handheld a lot of companies that have expanded from Nigeria into Côte d'Ivoire, as well as Francophone Africa, which is why he's here today. Maître Brizois, merci beaucoup. Vous êtes la bienvenue. Everybody is important. We also have Mr. Shehu Aliyu, who is on the board of First Bank. He's executive director responsible for public sector at First Bank. And he's also on the board of First Bank Senegal. Thank you very much, and you're welcome. Thank you for being with us. And then we have Mrs. Kemi Onobanjo, who is associate partner at McKinsey, and she's going to be one of our speakers today. And my brother, right in front of me, Dr. Abdul Kamara. Dr. Abdul Kamara recently moved to Abuja, so please take care of him. Be nice to him, all of the Abuja folks. Dr. Kamara is the Director General for AFDB here in Abuja. So when you start hearing about great knowledge work being done regarding Nigeria and things start changing, just know that AFDB brought the right person to Abuja. So Dr. Kamara, thank you. He's also going to be one of our speakers. And we have a massive representation from NESG. We have a massive representation from NESG. We have the chairperson of the mobilization committee, Mr. Demola Shogunle. Doctor. Dr. Demola Shogunle. We also have from NESG, we have members of the mobilization committee. We have the CEO. Oh, actually, before I move to the CEO of Odua Investment, Mr. Demola Shogule also has a day job. Dr. Demola Shogule has a day job. He is CEO of Stanbic Holdings, PLC. Dr. Shogule, welcome. And then we have my CEO, CEO of Odua Investment Company Limited, Mr. Abdurrahman Yunusa. Thank you very much. And he's also a member of the Mobilization Committee. We have my brother, Mr. TJ, and we have my sister, also members of the Mobilization Committee. We have our keynote speaker. She's going to arrive soon, but we're going to start. And then when she comes in, she will make the keynote statement. You know, when you're in government, there are no weekends. So the lady has been working all day. We're pulling her from national service to come and speak to us. So please be understanding. She will soon be here, but we will start, and we're moving very quickly to the opening remarks by the chairperson of the board of NESG. I know that the CEO of NESG is in here somewhere. Where is he? So everything great about NESG, please, Mr. Dr. Tayo Aduloju, this gentleman is our CEO of the NESG. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairperson.
Thank you, ma'am. And good evening, everyone. Welcome to this maiden edition of the Rising Together. To our friends from West Africa, bonsoir. Bienvenue, Abuja, bienvenue, NES30. That much I can say. The rest I'll keep to the end. But thank you also very much for joining us tonight. It's a profound honor to address you today and to welcome you on this very special occasion as the NESG hosts this Pan-African gathering of public and private sector leaders across the divides of the continent. The annual Nigerian Economic Summit is jointly hosted by the NESG on the private sector side and by the Federal Ministry of Budget and Economic Planning, representing the government. And for the past 3 decades, the Nigerian Economic Summit has served as a vital platform for dialogue, policy formulation, and consensus building among a wide range of stakeholders to drive Nigeria's economic development agenda forward. The summit has convened regional and global leaders to address critical socio-economic issues and to also propose actionable solutions. Like Nigeria, every other African country is a microcosm of the challenges the entire continent faces. Africa is a major hub of productive factor inputs with very interesting and rich natural resources, and of course, huge talent and the young demographics. We also have arable land, a vast market of 1.3 billion people, strategic coastal positioning, and significant progress that we've witnessed in the technology sector with so many unicorns now coming out of the continent. However, the pace of development across the continent has been too slow compared to what we have in other climes. And also too slow when you compare us with our peers in Asia. Africa's real GDP growth slowed from 1.1% in 2022 to 3.1% in 2023, underperforming most Asian regions. This is due to factors that we all know, including food and energy crisis arising from the Russian-Ukraine war, political instability, security challenges, weak global demand, and climate change. According to the AFDB, Africa's real GDP per capita has grown at one of the slowest rates globally since the 1980s. And most African economies have not significantly changed since the 1990s, with traditional sectors continuing to drive growth and employment. This is reflected in the slow pace of industrialization, our huge informal economy, the high rate of unemployment, especially amongst the youth, low human capital development, huge deficit in infrastructure, the escalating insecurity across the region, growing unemployment, rising poverty, rising inequality, net migration out of the continent, environmental degradation, and fragile states, and much more. With the changing trajectory of globalization, the global political and economic landscape continually becomes polarized as many economic, trade, and political factions emerge. This has implications for trade movements. It also has implications for investment flows, knowledge, and also technology transfers. It does also have implications for migration and for the future of work, amongst many other areas. This globalization allows African countries to reawaken to the continent's development priorities and to collectively renegotiate our ways of production. It also accentuates the need for us as African countries to leverage each other, to collaborate and work together, and to also collaborate to leverage the African Free Continental Trade Era after, so that we can fast-track economic progress and development on the continent. Therefore, to mark the 30th Nigerian Economic Summit, we have broadened the conversation at the summit to include a larger African community. We believe Africa can take advantage of the evolving global economy to lead a new wave of drastic economic progress on the continent. But this will require the collaboration efforts of key stakeholders. Thus, the theme of this summit, which is collaborative action for growth, competitiveness, and stability. It is essential that NES30 articulates how Nigeria can sustainably strengthen its internal capacity, and how the country can lead the new wave of growth in Africa to guarantee collective growth across the continent. Therefore, this summit, and starting with this evening session, will host key stakeholders across the continent, both Anglophones and Francophones, under the umbrella Rising Together. This session seeks to galvanize public and private sector stakeholders across the continent to explore emerging trends that will enable Africa to capitalize on new opportunities and also to chart a path forward to economic progress. This session, we also hope, will allow us to establish a foundation for cross-border business partnerships, focusing on overcoming language barriers and building trust amongst key business leaders and other stakeholders. The discussions we'll have tonight, we hope will also explore Pan-African collaboration, strengthening regional companies, and multinationals that have businesses across the continent, while also fostering other partnerships that can facilitate cross-border trade, generation of wealth, and economic prosperity for the continent. Your participation tonight, your successful contributions to the conversations, and your commitment to the engagement will be highly appreciated. I extend our profound appreciation to all our partners and to all participants who are here tonight for accepting our invitation to share your experiences, but more importantly, to also share your insights on the subjects of this meeting in the national interest and in the continent interest. I must thank His Excellency the Ambassador for showing up and for being with us again tonight. This demonstrates the partnership and collaboration we'd like to have across countries in the region. And I formally would like to seize this opportunity to welcome you all to the NES30, and of course, to wish us all a fruitful deliberation. Thank you all for listening, and welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, Dr. Olaniyi. You know, I was trying hard not to make that mistake, so I made him a doctor, and I think I'll just make everybody doctors. I mean, you will accept doctors and professors. And I would like to recognize our board member, a member of the board of the NESG, and all board members are important, but there are board members that also make the board important and significant. And this is who Mr. Ufot is to all of us. And we just want to say thank you very much for being here, Mr. Udeme Ufot. Thank you very much, sir. And thank you for all the support. And I also want to recognize someone who, if I just called her Madam Tech Nigeria, you know who she is. And this is Dr. Juliet Ehumwan. All of the wonderful things that made us like Google, it was because of her. And she has moved on. And she's now the CEO of Beyond Limits. And we're very happy that she can join us this evening. Thank you very much. And we also have the CEO of Sports Nigeria. And as you all know, sports is one of the areas actually that helps us to collaborate and integrate regionally, and a significant contribution to the economy. Mrs. Obi, thank you for being with us. So we're moving I'd like to first hand over to our MC for today. And I want to make sure that I don't make any mistakes. So, you are sure? Should we dash you the doctor? I think this one. Yes. So I'm going to hand us over to Mr. Adedeji, an international multilingual master of ceremonies. And he is the one that's going to take us through in a very professional manner. You know, mine is not that professional, but this one, that's the professional man.
Merci beaucoup, madame. Applaudissez, s'il vous plaît. Elle a bien fait. All right, so I guess we're skipping the keynote for now, hence she's not here. We'll now be having a panel discussion. It's navigating cross-border investments in multilingual environments and varying legal systems. En français, ça c'est naviguer dans les investissements transfrontaliers dans des environnements multilingues et des systèmes juridiques variés. To lead this team is she who has just been doing the introductions all along, Cecilia Akintumide. She's a seasoned executive with expertise in development finance, corporate governance, law, and strategy. She's an advisor to the Group CEO of EcoBank Transnational Incorporated, Africa Span Africa Bank, present in 39 countries, 35 African and 4 non-African. She also serves as chairperson of the Global Sanitation and Hygiene Fund. All right. She says she wants her Scott. All right. All right. So please, a round of applause for her. Joining as a panelist is Michelle Kizito Brizua, B. He's an Ivorian and partner at the law firm of Beliaka, yes? Yeah. Brizua B and Associates, a full-service law firm in Côte d'Ivoire with alliances formed across 19 sub-Saharan countries and across global businesses. Capitals including New York, Brussels, Paris, Dubai, London, and Geneva. Ça va comme ça? D'accord. Up next, Abdul Kamara. A round of applause for him. He is the Director General for Nigeria at the AFDP. Prior to that appointment, he was the Deputy Director General for East Africa as well as Country Manager for Ethiopia. Bienvenue, monsieur. Kemi Onobanjo. A round of applause for her. She is an associate partner at McKinsey and Company Nigeria with expertise in human resource management, strategy, and transformation delivery across various industries. Taiwo Oyedele. A round of applause for him, please. He is the chairman of the Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, with a broad mandate to carry out critical reforms concerning fiscal governance, revenue transformation, and economic growth facilitation. Ça va comme ça? Shehu Aliou. A round of applause for Madam Shehu Aliou. He was appointed Executive Director of the Public Sector in April 2024. Before his appointment, he was the Group Executive of Retail Bank in North Division, a position he occupied since 2018, after serving as the Regional Head of Retail Bank in North and Group Head of North Central in the same business unit. You're welcome, sir. So please put your hands together for our able moderator. Unfortunately, she will be standing most of the time, but she's very energetic.
Thank you very much. The panel is standing between you and dinner. So, but we will make it very efficient. So, rising together, et en français, on dit grandir ensemble. So, to set the context, you know, I kept on asking myself a question, and I won't ask them to answer it, except they want to, but I think let's just put it, they say, I guess, in our right pocket. So put it in your right pocket. Is there a difference between the investment dollar that comes from New York or the one, if you're African, that comes from Africa? And just hold on to that. So does it make a difference whether that investment is coming from next door or it's coming from very far? And so, you will answer that question yourself. But just to set the context, you always go to the brainy people, all of those ones that have doctors before their names. And they work for institutions like African Development Bank. So I will start with my brother, Abdul Kamara. Really great to see you in Nigeria after all the great work you've been doing in East Africa, managing over $1 billion of portfolio in one country alone, not to talk of the whole region. And your time in Sudan, we have to talk about that at some point. But really, let's set the context here. We have AFCFTA. AFDB did the high fives, which includes regional integration. Isn't this enough? Why this focus on rising together and this focus on investments? So, Abdul, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Celia. Your Excellency, the Ambassador, other dignitaries present in the room, good evening. Thank you for the question, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak at this Rising Together session, which is part of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group. AFCFTA, AFDB's high fives, yes. The AFCFTA, of course, as we know, is really being touted as a game changer that is going to change the continent. We have been told that the AFCFTA, if fully implemented, it's going to create a market of some, I think, $2.5 trillion, dollars. It's going to boost the continent to really go on higher value production. It's going to actually create a market that would be the biggest trading zone, and so on and so forth. But for sure, this is all good, but it's not sufficient. The high fives, yes, it's not sufficient unless they are backed by investments to the magnitude and scale that is going to really boost African growth and sustain it. And what am I saying here? Let's take, for example, the AFCFTA itself. If we continue trading with the same low-value products, with the same products that do not benefit from value addition, higher value products, to the extent that we will not be expected, to gain much from the AFCFTA. And of course, we have to boost production in the first place. So production, productivity, higher value production. But you wouldn't do this unless you have investment on a scale and consistency in key sectors that really matter. And that's the consideration that makes me assert here of infrastructure. That is why the African Development Bank has been focusing very much on infrastructure. And when we say infrastructure, of course, we are talking of road corridors that connect countries. Of course, we are here rising together. We will have all the legislations, removed, the free movement, concessions on tariffs and so on. But if you don't have the comparative advantage to physically move from one country to the other, to produce and bring it to the market at the comparative advantage, you are going nowhere. So infrastructure is key, and I will come later to that when I speak of the high fives. Of course, infrastructure requires private investment and requires it big time. The African Development Bank has various instruments to that. Maybe I'll talk about that also later when I talk about public-private partnerships. Because transformative operations like roads and power pools will not be financed by government on a sustainable basis. For example, at the moment, we are preparing a project called Kano Maradi. Maradi is in Niger, Kano is here in Nigeria. That financing is at a scale that is far beyond what the government can do by itself, and as such the bank comes in. We are also doing Rwanda, Burundi, DRC, standard gauge railway. So the bank also comes in there. Of course, it is not all debt financing. I mean, loans, project loans, corporate loans, or lines of credit, and so on. Sometimes it's guarantees that do the trick. Guarantees that give comfort to the private sector to ensure that whatever you are putting in, because the primary objective of a private investment generally is profit. Other ancillary objectives can come. So that comfort that you are putting in your money and you can get it back is very, very important. And then secondly, the productive sector. I just spoke of production at scale, but also value addition. We see that Africa's population is rising, but we also see that it's rising far above the job opportunities that are being created. So this requires deliberate efforts to look at sectors, especially agriculture, that actually employs 30 to 40%, depending on the country you move to, of the youth today. So that is why the African Development Bank has developed a program that we call the SAPZ, the Special Agro-Industry Processing Zones, which really is a deliberate effort to ensure that we give vibrancy to the agriculture sector. We move beyond the narrative of agriculture being a way of life to agricultural entrepreneurship. In Ethiopia, for example, since 2014, the government has made an effort to develop what they call integrated agro-industrial parks. Several value chains, wheat is one of them. So in 2018, the African Development Bank, using its TAT technology, TAT is Technologies for African Agricultural Transformation. In agriculture, productivity is very, very important. And also adapting technologies to suit agroecologies is very, very important. So the African Development Bank liaised, but also partnered with institutions such as the CGIAR to develop a heat-tolerant variety of wheat. So using this wheat-tolerant variety, it partnered with the government and private sector to support Ethiopia to move from a net wheat imported country, spending $850 million in 2018, to currently a wheat sufficiency country, and has actually signed contracts with Kenya and Djibouti for wheat import. So that is just one value chain. Of course, they have other value chains like oilseeds, rice, and so on and so forth. We are now making the effort to replicate that here in Nigeria. We currently have the SAPZ1, the Special Agro-Industry Processing Zone 1, which is ongoing in 7 states. I think it's Cross River states, Imo State, Ogun State, Oyo State, and so on. 7 of them. And that is really expected to boost the agricultural sector and contribute significantly to the economy of this country.
Thank you very much. So AFCFTA, high fives, fantastic, but without investments, we're going nowhere. And without going higher up in the value chain, and instead of just importing or exporting commodities, we have to have value addition. So let's still stay with our brainy people. And let's come to my sister from McKinsey. So, Kemi, let's continue to set the context. You have some very interesting data. And I think a few years ago, there was a publication from McKinsey on Africa's business revolution. Now, what was interesting was, anytime we talk about foreign direct investment, we look very far away. We expect the foreign direct investments to come from places that it takes maybe 2 days if you're going to get here, and multiple currency conversions. So let's hear from you. What's happening on the continent? What are you seeing with the data? And what are you seeing when it comes to investments that actually are African investments within Africa? Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I stand on existing protocols, just so I get you to dinner very quickly. So, couple of things. Indeed, the continent is experiencing a very challenging macroeconomic situation. I think, as Dr. Nii Yusuf, I have conferred a honorary NES doctorate on you, so we'll just keep the Dr. Nii Yusuf trend going till Wednesday at least, till Wednesday. So as he said, all of the different challenges, whether it's climate change, whether it's geopolitical crisis, the great thing is it's happening everywhere. And so the challenges are evenly distributed, right now. Which means that as a continent, we've had to look a bit inwards because the sources of FDI that we're used to are also diverting into other areas. Some of them are also looking inward to invest, to sort out, the different challenges that they're facing. We did a bit of work, as always, to look at, how many big businesses do we really have in Africa? And as at, 2021, which is the latest data we could collect for all the different countries, there are about 350 business champions, which means they have revenues greater than $10 billion. Annual revenues greater than $10 billion. So in Africa, there are about 345, let's say 350. I always say that number has gone down just by, if we even think about just the devaluation in Nigeria, in Kenya, in South Africa, I'm sure that number has gone down, but let's stick with 350. Of this 350, what is really exciting is that half of them are indigenous homegrown companies. You would expect that most of them will be multinationals, but half of that number is indigenous homegrown companies, which means there's such an opportunity for homegrown companies to expand within the continent, invest cross-border, and actually scale up internally. We don't have to wait for multinationals, Western firms, or even now Eastern firms, because we're seeing a lot of the FDI is moving from the West and now coming from the East. If you just look at the headlines, right? And there's a session tomorrow that FCDO is putting together where we looked at what's going on with the investment climate in Nigeria. So shameless plug, 8 o'clock tomorrow, show up. You'll see the data. And we saw that a lot of Western companies that have, pressure, quarterly earnings pressure, are exiting. However, there's a lot more Eastern FDI that's coming in. Companies that are money that's more family-owned, people who have more similarities with us. And in the same vein, as there's more Eastern FDI, we expect to see more African homegrown investment coming in because we understand our context, we understand the long game that we need to play, and this is where the opportunity is. So if half of the business champions in Africa are homegrown and African, it means that there should be more funding coming from within ourselves to scale this growth, to fund the infrastructure, to fund the growth that we're seeing. So there's opportunity. The money is on the continent. We just need to now facilitate the movement of those funds in a way that is seamless. Dr. Cecilia said, everybody gets a doctorate tonight, I promise you. Dr. Cecilia said is an African dollar the same as a Western dollar. I'll just use a Western dollar. And I think my perspective is that it's at a premium, right? Just the transaction costs of getting that African dollar from one African country to another is sometimes higher than getting that Western dollar in. So it is not the same. We're at a premium. And it should not be that, right? It should be easier for us to trade and facilitate. And I love the AFCFTA as a lighthouse for how we can do things together, but there's so much more that needs to come from there. Trade is great, services are even better. And we're seeing a shift in Africa from being a primarily, agriculture-led economy from about 60% in 2000 to now just about 40%. And services is growing. All the loss in quote from agriculture is going to services. Our population needs jobs. Trade alone cannot power that. And so investing in AFCFTA is great, but we need AFCFTA plus. We need it to happen in trade, we need to happen in services, and we find that for people to be employed, companies need to be set up. So this ease of doing business as a big enabler, right? Again, is it easier for someone to come from, another country to set up here versus a homegrown company? In some instances, that is the case. So how do we facilitate that? Those are part of the conversation I'm really excited that we will begin to have this week. So the numbers are there. The money is on the continent. How do we get the money across in a way that makes sense? Of those 345 companies, for example, more than 2/3 of them are concentrated in 4 countries: Nigeria, Egypt, Morocco, South Africa. About half of those companies are in South Africa. So the collaboration that we speak about is going to have to happen across regional economic communities, as well as within regional economic communities. How do we come together as one market, one block, have higher negotiating power to be able to attract investment, to be able to hedge one another, because everywhere in a region cannot blow up at the same time, right? So as you think about your portfolio, having a regional portfolio is actually much more, it's smarter, because we can't have coups in all 24 countries at the same time, right? There won't be elections in every country at the same time. So for investors, they need to think about it. Abdi is like, yeah, maybe not 24, maybe 22. But no, I think from a risk perspective, diversifying at a regional level is the smart thing for investors to do. And we see that as we create those platforms for investments to come in a cross-border way, in an aggregated way, we will see more of those investments that are on the continent being unlocked. Another interesting thing is like a lot of African countries are actually investing a lot outside of the continent. So the funds are there. We need to just create the enabling environment for it to come in and stay in, such that we catalyze job creation for our young people. In 20 years, we're going to have the youngest workforce in the whole world, right? And no matter how much emigration happens, there will still be a lot of us in Africa. Like, no matter how many people leave, there will still be so many people here to employ and empower and lift out of poverty. And so cracking this is so critical. Having the right infrastructure, the right enabling environment, the right policy framework to allow these dollars to move seamlessly is going to be the task for us as a group going forward.
Thank you very much. You've said it, the world is changing, the flow of resources, it has changed and will continue to change. And unfortunately, the African dollar going into Africa is going in at a premium because of the high transaction costs. Yet, cross-border investments are great. It's a massive, proven way of achieving risk diversification. If you're a Nigerian company with investments in CEFA, you're actually doing better than those that are just investing in Nigeria alone. I mean, the currency, just the currency valuations, if you're playing it, that alone has helped you achieve quite a lot compared to those that have focused on single countries. So let's go to those who are actually traversing through Africa and putting down boots and going from one Nigerian company to a bank that's in multiple African countries. So my brother, Shehu, it's so good to see you. And,
thank you very much, Cecilia.
When I look at Shehu, and he's on the board of FBN Senegal. But Shehu looks Senegalese.
Do I?
And if he goes to Senegal, he will easily be embraced as a Senegalese. So there's something that we're missing out, that there's more that unites us than actually separates us. And that always helps in business. It always helps in business. So really, my brother, how has this walk been, or this journey of First Bank traversing through Africa? Has it made business sense? What worked? What can be better? If you can just share the experience with us.
Thank you very much, Cecilia. Your Excellency, Ambassador Traore, Côte d'Ivoire's ambassador to Nigeria, fellow panelists, distinguished invited guests, good evening. I will begin on a congratulatory note. Congratulations to NESG on their 30th anniversary. and our appreciation on behalf of the board and management of First Bank for the opportunity to feature on this panel. Thank you very much. To answer your question, Cecilia, I will go a bit, do a bit of this thing, dig into history. First Bank's sojourn in Africa started in 2011 when First Bank of Nigeria acquired an entity in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, BIC, precisely, Banque Internationale du Crédit. Following immediately to that, the bank acquired the stake of International Commercial Bank, ICB, an investment group based in Malaysia that had banking licenses across West Africa. At the time, ICB had licenses in Guinea, in Gambia, in Senegal, in Ghana, and Sierra Leone. So simultaneously, I would say we started operations across 5 different geographies immediately after our sojourn into DRC. In terms of the objective of our sojourn across Africa was purely strategic. Number one, to diversify the bank's earning base from our home market in Nigeria across other markets in Africa. Number two, it ties to the bank's wider global strategy. First Bank has had presence in the United Kingdom for 30 years, over 30 years now, through its subsidiary First Bank UK. The idea behind investing in those entities across West and Central Africa was to direct investment flows from those countries to Europe through First Bank UK. So you may say the plan was to make First Bank UK the correspondent bank of choice for businesses in those countries. On the reverse side also is for First Bank UK to help mobilize capital into those countries. And the third objective, which ties also to the bank's global strategy, is to implement the bank's global account management strategy, which in a nutshell provides banking coverage to businesses that we bank in Nigeria that have cross-border presence across those countries. Over the last 14 years since our first step outside Nigeria, it's been an exciting and rewarding experience. Number one, we have been able to turn around the fortunes of those moribund entities that we took over 14 years ago. We flowed capital, we invested in technology, we invested in capacity, such that today, those entities are all profit-making, and they are making decent contributions to the bottom line of the parent. That is number one. And we have been able to also establish a very respectable presence across some of the countries where we do business. In DRC, in Sierra Leone, we've been able to leverage our balance sheet in the UK, our capacity in mining, to impact mining activities in DRC through packaging very huge loans to entities engaged in mining in DRC and in Sierra Leone. In Senegal, we have partnered with the government in Senegal to support in providing for the energy needs of the country. In Ghana, we have built a very decent and respectable retail franchise. The same thing with Guinea. We are pushing in Gambia, we are pushing in Sierra Leone. But note should be made that across all those entities, we've been able to turn them around, and none of them is loss-making at this point in time. In addition to that, we've also been able to impact financial inclusion across those entities. We pioneered agent banking in Nigeria. We deployed agent banking across all those entities in West and Central Africa. So we've been able to integrate people into the financial systems, enabling them to access financial services, enabling them to access finance where they need finance, and being a catalyst, so to say, for economic growth in those countries. But of interest is the fact that through agency banking, we were also able to create jobs because we're building entrepreneurs in those countries through the agency banking initiative. So we've been able to create employment, and much of the employment we created is amongst women. Cecilia, you're smiling. And that, yes, it's amongst women. So we've also facilitated the attainment of some of the SDGs, the development goals of those countries. So in a nutshell, as I mentioned, it's been a rewarding experience for First Bank since we sojourned out of Nigeria 14 years ago. We're looking at other markets with keen interests. We're not stopping in those with those 4 or 6 countries where we're currently operating. And we will pitch our tents where we see value that will be accreted from those activities. Thank you very much.
It's great to hear of the experience of First Bank, and that it's been positive. And quite a lot of those countries, it's interesting that your first foray into this Africa expansion was in a Francophone country. And so this so-called language divide, particularly with technology, is not really something we cannot overcome. You know, there's some people that's actually the only barrier. They're like, they speak French. Yeah, there's Google Translation. I actually appear to be bilingual because I use this app and I go translate to French and it gives me the French translation, and it's usually very good. So, but learn French and employ French speakers, and really we can overcome that language divide. It's also great that, you know, banks that appeared to be loss-making or that actually were loss-making have been turned around, and they're now actively contributing to the group bottom line. So it's really great to hear that. And you know, Kemi, you mentioned some of the challenges that we're facing, and I know that whether it's in Europe or in the US or in France, really the enabling environment is one way that you attract investment. And tax is actually also one of, you know, it's like the other day I was speaking to someone, and someone was going to open an office in Lagos State, and the person said, no, first just get an apartment, do your business from your apartment safely, because the day Lagos State realizes that you're operating your business, you will start at a loss because they're going to make you pay taxes. So sorry, Governor Sanwo-Olu, I think your LIRS folks are very, very efficient, maybe too efficient. So maybe I'm not supposed to say that, NESG, I'm sorry. But Mr. Oyedele, what can we expect, particularly with the wonderful work that you're doing, and congratulations. I mean, I never thought I'll be smiling to anybody that has anything to do with taxes. But I actually respect you for what you have done and what you have achieved. And when we talk about all of these issues of enabling environment, where will taxes fit in? to attracting investment and even encouraging our companies to go outside of Nigeria and invest, what should we be expecting from you, and what words of wisdom do you have for us?
Thank you very much for that question. I'll stand on the existing protocols so I don't make mistakes. I'll start by making some remarks, maybe from tax, and then I will expand it to the rising together. If I ask a question in this room, whether you think Africa is rising, and you don't need to say it out, what would your answers be? I know what my answer will be. God bless you. My answer is that we are not rising, right? And then we need to rise, and then rise together. I'll read quickly the Agenda 2063, the Africa we want. Because that's like the umbrella for everything, whether it's hi-fi, whether it's... By the way, this agenda is now going to 10 years. Actually, it's more than 10 years. Yeah, it's 11 years. Number one, we want a prosperous Africa based on inclusive growth and sustainable development. Number two, there's 7 of them. An integrated continent that is politically united and based on the ideals of Pan-Africanism and the vision of African Renaissance. Number 3, an Africa of good governance, democracy, respect for human rights, justice, and the rule of law. Number 4, a peaceful and secure Africa. Number 5, Africa with a strong cultural identity, common heritage, values, and ethics. Number 6, an Africa whose development is people-driven, relying on the potential offered by African people, especially its women and youths, and caring for children. Number 7, and the last, an Africa that is strong, united, resilient, and is an influential global player and partner. You know, if I want to summarize all that I have read, I would say that Africa cannot rise until the African states are rising. The African states cannot rise until their people are rising. So the common denominator is the people. If I take that to the question you asked me about tax and the enabling environment or the lack thereof, I have an equation that we have been working with. So that equation says tax is never a conversation to be had in isolation, because tax is the consequence of economic activities. You must start your conversation with the economic activities. Tax is not the end in itself. The reason why we collect taxes is so we can improve the lives, livelihood, and the well-being of the people. So tax is in the center. And one test, litmus test, that you can carry out all the times and you would always be right, is any policy whatsoever, fiscal, monetary, tax, that distorts economic activities is a bad policy, unless if that distortion was intended. Right? For example, we can say we don't want people smoking too much. We can distort that economic activity. If it's not intended, that policy is bad. Second test, any policy, including tax, fiscal, monetary, trade, that undermines the well-being of the people, which is the outcome, is a bad policy. The bad news is that we have so many of these policies in Africa. And people in the room can attest to it. I have practical examples myself. I was meant to be in Dakar last week because there was this thing about health tax and health fiscal policy in Africa, and we're supposed to converge and talk about it. And I had submitted my passport to get a visa to Europe for another engagement, so I didn't have my passport. I was still very excited going to Dakar, so I got the ECOWAS one. So I got to the airport, I couldn't board the plane because it says Senegal no longer accepts any passport that is not biometric. So I couldn't attend. And I said to myself, why can't we make this our ECOWAS story or African story on a bigger stage? Like I'm traveling between Abuja and Lagos. Isn't that what they're doing in Schengen? What's the rocket science in just allowing people to move around freely? A few weeks ago, I went to Kenya, and the process of getting the visa was complicated. And every time you get only a single entry visa. As I was complaining, the Kenyan people visited Nigeria and they said they were meant to get visa on arrival, and it was 5 hours they spent at the airport, and they paid over $200 per person. This does not make sense. We can say nice things to ourselves. We can write that. We can talk about AFCFTA. Go to the border. The officers there are not aware there's something called AFCFTA to start with. I feel like for us to start rising together, let's start with the low-hanging fruit and let's be honest with ourselves. Let's start by removing impediments and bottlenecks and disincentives. It will not cost government money, but it will open up our economies and we will grow. And there will be prosperity for our people. And then and only then can we say that we are rising together. That is the news I have for you.
But you have deflected my question. and you've made everybody to love you and unlove me. And now I don't know whether I can get back into Lagos State or I should start living in Abuja. But
So by the way, sorry to interrupt, maybe I should spend 30 seconds talking about the tax. So the example you gave and the comment you made about Lagos State, you just said the right thing. Don't feel bad about it. I say it myself. I'm not always politically correct, but if we must move forward, we must say the truth. My wife runs a small business in Lagos. For more than 8 years, she hasn't broken even. The accountant will know you've not made money, right? So we do family subsidy to keep the business running. Very close to this time last year. So we said, maybe if you just touch up the building, do some banners to advertise, and then she spent, one of the things she did was she spent 180,000 naira to do a banner. 2 days later, Lagos State people showed up with ruler and pencil and they did the measurement. If you had a picture of a person there, it's more expensive than if it were just letters. When they were done, she got a bill of 430,000 naira for 1 year. So she actually cried. Like, I've not made money. She said, you know what? I'll remove the banner. Because what's the point? And it's painful. That's just one example. And I've said that if anybody wants to do a social experiment, do a banner, Just pretend like you want to do a business. You're not doing a business. Put it by the streets. Get a chair and sit down. Within 2 days, at least 5 to 10 agencies will show up. Business premises, advert, levy, Lassa this. You haven't sold $1 or 1 naira. You haven't made. It's almost like as if it's a crime that you wanted to start a business. And I said to myself, this test is very easy. We will know when we are ready to rise. The day I put up that banner, and I get a call that says, we are aware you want to start this business. Are you aware of this credit facility for your sector? Are you aware of this group where we build capacity? We have to do those things and then scale. So the way we are working on the fiscal reform and tax for Nigeria is exactly that. We can't become a wealthy country by taxing poverty. It's a contradiction. Yeah, you have to think about how do you create prosperity first. So from large businesses to small ones to individuals, we want to reduce your tax burdens. We want to debottleneck the fiscal areas where people that are exporting are struggling to export. And Naira is there struggling against dollars. We still don't allow people to export. I'm not saying it will be easy, but we have to start first by making correct diagnosis before we do prescriptions and be very clinical with execution. So that way, we begin the journey one step at a time without reversing more than we move forward. Thank you.
We have become best friends. Thank you very much. Maître Brizois, ça va? Now, Maître Brizois has actually been part of this Africa expansion. A lot of companies that have expanded from Nigeria into Côte d'Ivoire, he's represented them and continues to represent them as they do business in Côte d'Ivoire. He hasn't paid me, so it's not like I'm advertising his firm or anything like that, but he comes with a lot of experience to this conversation and also goes beyond just Côte d'Ivoire, helps companies as they expand into the rest of Francophone Africa. So, what is working? What are the barriers that you have seen in addition to those that have already been discussed? What are the incentives? Would like you to share that with us.
Thank you. I shall stand on the existing protocol. First of all, I forgot the Africa Cup of Nations at home in Abidjan. I just want to apologize for forgetting that. But I must tell you that when we won, I told my people that ECOWAS won. Next time in Morocco, we shall pass the cup to you if you are able to qualify.
Michel.
Thank you very much. And okay, I'm still a lawyer, even if I introduce myself as a business ambassador. But I think that, I beg to differ, I think that Africa is rising and we are rising together, because most of the time when we attend event like that, it's like Europe with an African country, Asia with an African country. And today, as an Ivorian, I'm invited to speak and share my experience about what I've done with African company. I won't even call them Nigerian company, because I think that we have in Africa multinational entities. And for me, that's where we have to start about creating a meaningful dialogue. I would like to recognize today the presence of NICA. It's true, I represent them, but we have the chair of NICA in Nigeria, my former boss. I learned a lot from him. Back in the day when they started to acquire a company in Nigeria, I'm sure that in Côte d'Ivoire people were saying they are not afraid to go there because people have some funny ideas for certain stories. And the company is successful. And we have a chair, a very respected professional. And that shows that before going to the legal aspect, we have to start sharing meaningful information about our markets. When I wake up in the morning, I read These Days, Vanguard, and some other people to know what's going on. the story that I will never forget, I think it was in 2009 and 2010, it was at Eco Hotel. And there was a summit about Brazil and Nigeria. And somebody was making some comment and asking Dr. Okanjo that, yes, you know, we are interested to do more in Nigeria, but you know, you have issues like corruption. And she bluntly and simply said to her, if you are not in Nigeria, you are not in Africa. And that's the same thing for Nigeria. The good thing about the idea of inviting a neighboring country to such an event is that Nigeria is still the giant of Africa, but you will not be the giant of Africa if you have no clue of what is going on in Francophone Africa, your next borders. And that's how it starts. And to go to the legal aspect of that, you have in Africa 17 countries sharing the same corporate, business, and commercial law. That means that if you set up something in Senegal, you will just have to do copy and paste to do the same thing in DRC. When sometimes we are tasked to ask about expansion or projects, you just tell them, look, what we are doing, we will do the same thing in Senegal and in Cameroon. It's true in terms of tax, labor law, many land issues, many countries kept their local regulation, but since 1993, you have a group of 17 countries, mostly Francophone, who are sharing the same corporate and business law. That means that the day one you start, you can have 17 subsidiaries in a region in Africa. I think that even the European community has not done so. So in terms of mapping a strategy, you don't have to worry about, okay, what are we going to do in Mali? What are we going to do in DRC? The laws, especially in terms of corporate, commercial law, are the same. When we go to investment law in terms of FDI, most of those countries have the formal colonial French spirits in their regulation. Many of them also have what we call a promotion center in terms of facilitating investment in those countries. So I think that it's true. You have to do your due diligence, choose which market where you can make a difference. But the first thing is to share and speak among ourselves. What can we do together? And I think that that's a good story that you are starting today. I just hope that it's not going to be a one-off, and it's going to be even in several sectors, because when you look at what is going on, you have in Senegal already FBN, in Côte d'Ivoire you have 3 or 4 Nigerian banks. So you have already the infrastructure with the financial services. The only thing missing is the SME sectors, where we have a lot to learn on each side. You may not know, but Nollywood is one of the best stories in our markets. So we have the same culture. Language is not an issue when people have to make money. Language is not an issue when people have to make money. So it's just for us to try and see how at the policy level, because I think that ECOWAS can do more, how with our business organization, we can share more information about the opportunities at hand on both sides, and make sure that the enabling environment is improved, so that it's not going to be only a dinner, but it's going to be a dinner to celebrate success both from Francophone countries, but also from Nigerian. I think that it's a great opportunity, but you can do more than that. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Maître Bizois. We wanted to make this as interactive as possible. And I didn't realize, even as a lawyer, that we had 17 countries. So this is under OHADA? Wow. So we can definitely do business together. and I've been asking all the questions all by myself. I have enjoyed it, but I just wonder if there are questions from the floor that would like to ask our dear panelists. Any questions from the floor? Going? Going? Okay.
Yeah, not really a question as such. My name is Bongo Adi. I'm a professor of economics at Lagos Business School. So to the African Development Bank, you mentioned what you're doing in Ethiopia. But I realized that some few years back, the UNDP did a study, identifying about 70 value chains that could be fully domesticated within Africa. So what you're doing in Ethiopia, I think, is something that I think can be replicated across Africa. But it needs to be done, in a standardized format. So I'm asking if there is any sort of a framework that helps us to tap and leverage these value chains in manufacturing, pharmaceuticals, agriculture, leatherworks, and I think there's another one. Yeah, so, having a standardized framework that could help us to tap into value chains, I think will help, instead of, doing it in silotic fashion. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, there's one.
Thank you very much. My question goes to Oyedele. It's not a question per se, but just to put some relevance into what you're doing. Because a lot of our we often say that in Nigeria, our political parties are not run on ideology. But the little study I've done has shown me that fiscal policy is actually what drives ideology. Therefore, if what you're doing can actually infuse some discipline into how people want to run government, either they are taxing to spend or they are taxing to distribute, it will be important. Let us not just have what we are doing as the normal fiscal policy thing. Let's see whether we can drive deeper to make sure we persuade political leaders to begin to think about how they think, how they can impact on the people through taxation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, two observations from the floor, and I'd like to hear responses from you, and then just very quickly, short last words before I give the floor to His Excellency, the Ambassador of Cote d'Ivoire. But just very quickly, last few words from each of you.
Okay, I'll start since I have one of the questions. Very good question on the special agro-industry processing zones. Of course, the special agro-industry processing zones or industrial processing zones is an approach that has been very well developed and very well vetted. Of course, as you know, countries have different, production, opportunities. In some countries, you have value chain that is more livestock driven. For example, you gave leather as an example. That is a value chain as well in Ethiopia. In other countries, you have rice as a value chain, and in others, you have other types of crops. And of course, we are advanced in some countries more than the others because of the way, countries, came for the request. But definitely, the objective is not to leave anyone behind, not to leave any country behind. Ethiopia may be very advanced, but I think we are developing SAPZ in Sierra Leone, in Liberia, in Tanzania, and even here in Nigeria. You would agree with me that starting a process with all the 36 states at the same time, you will be neither here nor there. You have to make a choice. You call the governors, you talk to them. Some of them will express interest at that point in time. Others will wait to see. But that wait and see is also in our own interest because it gives us an opportunity to get lessons that will improve, the approach as we move forward. And that is why when I spoke earlier, I was talking of the 7 states that we have started. As a matter of fact, after the 7 states, Cross River State, Imo State, Ogun, Oshun, I think Kano and Kaduna and Kwara State. Sorry, not Oshun, it's Oyo. We are developing, but even those states are at different stages because the readiness depends on studies. It depends on disclosures of environmental assessments. It depends on state budgeting, whether or not people are going to be moved, compensations, and so on and so forth. And now we have a pipeline of 27 states in the waiting. The current ongoing program is $580 million together with IFAD and Islamic Development Bank, and next year we are expecting to do $1 billion. And based on our assessment, that may not do more than 10, maximum 12. So it will be sequenced, but we'll take lessons on board to make sure that by the time we conclude, we really have delivered very well. But what is all of this doing? Somebody was talking of monetary fiscal policies. This is actually the structural part because monetary policy, short-term responses is what you would get, but the longer term of really creating jobs, when you talk of inflation, food inflation, yes, but when you start producing at a scale that you can maintain, you will ensure that it also has an impact of price stabilization and actually, availability of foods and so on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, last words. Should I start with you, Aliu?
Okay. Thank you, Cecilia. Well, our sojourn across Africa has been, like I said, a rewarding experience. And what it shows is it makes commercial sense to do business in Africa. But there are bottlenecks to intra-African trade. Banks, amongst other things, we exist to facilitate trade between nations. Unless those bottlenecks are removed, it will be difficult for trade to happen at the scale that is desired and also encourage further expansion and sojourn across the entire continent by banks. So it is important at the continental level, integration initiatives are encouraged so as to facilitate seamless trade between entities across African borders and also facilitate the movement, the sojourn of many more financial institutions across Africa. Thank you very much.
I think I can go next. Yes, please. Yes, so I have one remark that I want to respond to, and then I'll make my closing remark as well. So what we have seen around the fiscal space, and I do agree, is such an important aspect of governance that I don't think we have taken seriously across Africa. So what we have seen so far actually very similar to other countries in Africa, whether it's Kenya, whether it's Ghana, whether it's Cote d'Ivoire. And one of the ways you would know is that many African countries tax investment significantly. We tax investment, we tax capital. And I say it's the distinction between whether you're taxing seed or fruits. We say we want to maximize tax collection, but you're just taxing what will give you more taxes tomorrow, today. And that doesn't help. If you look at the average corporate income tax rate, Africa has the highest. The same Africa that needs the most investment. What data has shown us is that the lower, and if these tax rates are just the ones you see, by the time you add the implicit taxes, the informal taxes, the one from non-state actors, maybe it's double what we see on paper. Even what we see on paper is already too high. What data shows is that the more you're able to attract investments, the more the economy grows. The more it grows, you can make money from other taxes. Like when I pay more people because they're employed, they pay personal income tax. When they buy stuff, they pay VAT. We need to understand that philosophy. So the other point I want to make is the fact that at the end of the day, we have to be clear about how we measure our success. And I really love this idea by the NESD, and I also hope that we can sustain it. What I would recommend is this time next year, we should have developed the outcomes that we use to measure whether we are rising, and let's call ourselves out. Maybe we just do a line, all the countries in Africa, the ones that have made it more difficult to even move around. Because as we are trying to move forward, some are moving backwards. Right. So let's measure it. Let's be sincere about implementing those things for our own sake. And then I believe that I think Africa is like the biggest opportunity in the world for growth, for prosperity, and for everything. We just need to get out of our own ways and fix our issues. And I know it's possible, and I'm optimistic that it will be done.
Thank you very much. So, Kemi?
I mean, not much else to say. At the beginning, he thought Africa was not rising. And at the end of this conversation, he has become optimistic. So, this has been a fantastic discussion. I think the consensus is clear. We all see the opportunity. We all know that we need investment to unlock this opportunity. We're aware of the barriers, and essentially what we need to do is start seeking solutions. The solutions are going to come from us. It's not going to come from the West. It's not going to come from even the East. It's really going to come from us. And so, again, I completely agree with NES starting this today, and hopefully at NES31, we'll be able to begin to see what countries are truly facilitating this and how is FDI flowing within Africa. Foreign is foreign, whether it's coming from Ghana or it's coming from Cote d'Ivoire, it is foreign, right? And so we want to see more of that. It is good for us to do business together, and one thing I'm taking away is language is not a barrier when there's money to be made. So let's get to work.
Thank you. I think, I still believe that Africa is the only gold mine that Africans themselves have not yet discovered. So let us start first with intelligence and sharing information about who we are in terms of opportunities and where are the opportunities. Because I'm sure that with a better understanding and knowledge and have at least access to the quality of information about the business environment, opportunity will develop. Second step, it's true, it's good to measure who are not performing in terms of facilitating the environment so that things can be fixed, but it can be formed by very small targets. We have already our regions, ECOWAS. We have some other communities in Africa. The only thing is to put on the table those who are investing, expressing their frustration, where they are having issues, so that policymakers, government, and private sector can decide and sit on what should be done to progress. I think that now we have almost a daily flight between Abidjan and Lagos. We need very simple measure where we will help businesses to flourish. I would like to pause here, and I'm sure that I hope that next year we will have more Lusophone country, Angola and some other countries, to come and sell their country and make opportunities visible for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You know, VP Solomon from AFDB just shared with me, the AFDB has what it calls the Africa Visa Openness Index, which is a tool that measures how open African countries are to visitors from other African countries. I think it's an index that we should all, when we get home, just before we go to bed, it may be good news or bad news or nightmares or sweet dreams, but please check this index. I'm going to check it tonight. And really, before we round up, I'll just like to give His Excellency the microphone. And he's been working on collaboration between Cote d'Ivoire and Nigeria, and he's sitting right at the helm of what we've been discussing today. So it's really appropriate that we give him the last word. Your Excellency.
Thank you, Cecilia. I should congratulate all the panelists for their brilliant and detailed presentation. I can confess that at a certain moment of the discussion, I was afraid. But when the question was posed on the rising together, yes or no, but I'm happy to see that optimism has come. Optimism is not an option, it is a must. Because that is what can give us the engine, the energy to move forward. Of course, there is a lot of challenges that you have pointed out, how to scale up the investment. If we want to change Africa in 1 or 2 generations, it's not the same if we want to change Africa in 10 generations. We have a very big challenge on scaling up the investment. We have a problem of harmonization of our business laws, problem of easing travel, many problems. For instance, when we talk about CFTA, people sometimes they forget that we have CFTA since 20 years at the ECOWAS region. It has helped the region. In 2003, the regional trade was about $5 billion. 10 years later, it was at $15 billion. It has helped, but now it's stagnant, it's not moving more. If we cannot take profit from the CFTA at the regional level, how can we benefit it from the continental level? And everything is here for that, to take benefit from that. And we have to work. Many things exist already, even in the business law. When I was ECOWAS commissioner, I worked on the regional code investment. We work with all the country, and I remember Nigeria experts, they took a very strong leadership on this work. This work is there, it has been adopted. But member states have not yet implemented, domesticated in their law. Many things have been done, many things are on the ground, we just need to implement them. And I want to thank you again, this initiative. I think that Nigeria have to take a strong leadership on this, particularly for the region, even for the continent. We, West African country, we are waiting for more leadership responsibility from Nigeria. That is where we are working. The future of Nigeria is in Africa. Even the problem we are going with the economy, the Naira, the solution, part of the solution is at the regional level. And that's why we as a diplomatic mission, we are working trying to connect business people from Nigeria and Cote d'Ivoire and other countries. We organize trips, business trip to Cote d'Ivoire, business trip from Cote d'Ivoire to here. And we hope that if we have this support from all the stakeholders, we can succeed. We don't have the choice. We have to be optimistic to rise together. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Excellence. Thank you very much. And really, to everyone, thank you for being very patient with us. We'd like to quickly take a group photo, but maybe I'll like to invite Mr. Demola Shogunle to make the vote of thanks. You see now, doctor, professor. No. Then we'll take our photos. People can go and eat. It's just that we won't have any speeches when we start eating, you know. So that's why we're doing vote of thanks now, and then we'll do the photos. But really, this has been great, and I appreciate His Excellency telling us about the work that has been done at the regional level. A lot has been done. We absolutely just have to build in execution capacity. Let us implement what we have in place. And really, language is not a barrier when we're talking about money. So, and I want to, you know, we've been talking about the Nigerian banks and how they're expanding across Africa. But there's an organization that actually funds Nigerian banks, and that is the Development Bank of Nigeria. And I want to recognize the CFO, Madam Ijeoma of the Development Bank of Nigeria, who is here with us today. And thank you for the great work that you're doing. There aren't very many female CFOs. So please, can we give her another round of applause? Thank you very much. So, Mr. Shogunle.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellency, Ambassador Traore, thank you so much. We could not have envisaged, the depth, of what you brought, to this gathering. But thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for the charge that you've given us. We really appreciate your time, your energy, your commitment, in making this, this maiden edition a reality. And for me and for NESG, a very historic moment. It's not every time you have an inaugural edition of a segment of a big event that you have this level of, what I would say, turnout, participation, quality of engagement, the depth of engagement, and the quality of the people that we've brought in here. So thank you so much, for joining us. God bless you. For our panelists, each and every one of you, we thank you so much for your time, for, individual contributions that you've made to the success of this engagement, this dialogue. Indeed, we are rising together. And we've made it short and sharp. Every statement from each of you, I could still remember and recount, And, by the time we are talking whether AFCFTA at the border, whether they would think he's a staff or he's an officer in immigration. Very important. And you told us, look, you told us that, look, language is not a barrier when there's money to be made. Right. And we've seen how we were able to start, and at the end of the day, we all were able to agree that, look, we need to work together. We need to share, the same aspiration. You told us those 7 bullet points. Is it Agenda 2060 something? Is incredible. And fantastic work that AFDB is doing. McKinsey, thank you so much, for bringing your own perspective in terms of investment and the rest. And First Bank, always the first. Over 120 years old now. 130 years, and still going and waxing strong. all of you, please, thank you so much, for giving us this opportunity to learn from you, to get your own perspective. I would like to thank the board of NESG. I will still come back to, members of our mobilization committee. The board of NESG, NES30 was deliberately set out as something special. We call it we call it anniversary summit. And we felt that after 30 years, what should we be doing, in terms of charting a new path for the next 30 years? And we felt, look, we've been doing NESG, we've been having this summit for 30 years. We are just talking amongst ourselves. So members of the mobilization committee, Mrs. Akintomide and some of those guys there, they felt, look, let's introduce a segment to bring our Francophone brothers and Francophone sisters to a forum like this where we could actually rub minds together. And lo and behold, we got the concept paper, we presented it to the Central Organizing Committee. It was accepted 100%. So, members of the Central Organizing, I know Boye is the chairman, please, thank you so much. Chairman of NESG, thank you. It was accepted 100%. When we also felt that at what point within the 3-day program to position it, we had to think, look, our colleagues, our brothers and sisters, they will be traveling from Côte d'Ivoire, they will be traveling from other African countries. They will probably get to Abuja Saturday or Sunday. Let us actually hold this event as a pre-event ahead of the 3-day summit. Again, the Central Organizing Committee accepted it. And that is why we are here today. If you just look around, you won't believe that we are doing this for the first time. And given, the mandate and the marching order, either from His Excellency or from the panelists, we've already got the agenda for next year. It can only increase, it can only grow. We will have, colleagues from Angola, from, Lusophone countries, from Mozambique. We have to extend it. Because at the end of the day, look, for us in Africa and in Nigeria, whatever we are meant to do, given the fact that this is the last frontier of development, if we don't get it right, then it's 1.3 billion people we are joking with, and we cannot afford that. So I would like to thank us again. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for everybody who has shown up here. And you've encouraged us, and we want to wish you a fantastic dinner. God bless you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Demola Shogunle, board member.
Très bien. Il faut faire le photo maintenant. So we have the photo session now. Moderator, please join them.
Without you, the photo session will not be complete. So ladies and gentlemen, please help us appreciate Abdul Kamara. Thank you very much. Help us appreciate Kemi Onobanjo, Michelle Brizuabi, Taiwo Yedele, please a round of applause for him too, Shehu Aliyu, and our able moderator who's done a good work for us, Cecilia Akin Tomidi.
Fantastic, my chairman.